Hi, welcome to another episode of Miami Cyber Stories, where we spotlight entrepreneurs shaping the future of our city and beyond. I'm Matt Mulcahy, founder and CEO of Miami Cyber. Today, we're diving into a topic that touches every aspect of life, mental health. Joining me is Anneke Johnson, the visionary behind Myndworx, a telehealth counseling platform that's redefining access to mental health care across the country. Hi, Anneke, how are you?
I'm great, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So, Anneke, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and where you're tuning in from?
I'm actually tuning in from Hawaii right now. I own a private practice telehealth counseling business.
So, the first thing I always like to focus on is the business and your business in particular. So, what inspired you to start Myndworx? And was there a personal or professional moment that drove you to make this leap?
What led me to start the business initially was the pandemic. I actually came to Hawaii and started working remotely. The pandemic gave us an opportunity to be able to bill insurance for telehealth services, which was not something that we were able to do before. So I saw an opportunity. I saw a really increased need. There was so many people who really needed help during the pandemic, and it was probably more people coming for counseling during that period than any other time in history. So, that allowed the gateway of telehealth to open up for people to be able to receive this service. And I noticed that a lot of tech companies started popping up. As I started in private practice for myself, I started to become full. I saw there was a strong client need, and I decided I really needed to expand my practice. A lot of the tech companies that were opening counseling practices, their focus is marketing, technology, low-cost services. And, they recruited a lot of providers during that time and were paying them a really unreasonable rate for the services that they were delivering. And as someone who has been to school to be a counselor and gone through that process, I really recognized that there's a need here to provide a service to the client, to have available appointments, and also pay a fair rate to providers. And that was kind of what initially started my decision to create the group practice. And since then, we have continued to grow year after year.
That's great. Yeah, and I think COVID really accelerated the decentralized model across really every aspect of healthcare. I know, radiology was a big one that I have a lot of experience with. Where radiologists were not allowed to work from home previous to COVID because they had the big reading rooms in hospitals. And obviously there's importance in connection between the therapist and the patient and having to be in person. But when we couldn't be in person because of rules or restrictions, you kind of have to make it work, and you found a way to do that. So you touched on being a therapist yourself. So what experiences as a therapist led you into entrepreneurship?
Well, entrepreneurship wasn't really a natural path for me. I spent years working as an employee or a contractor for other organizations, and I just focused on doing good clinical work. One experience was that I participated in the National Health Service Corps, and that gave me a deep appreciation for military families and the challenges that they face because I had to relocate to St. Mary's, Georgia, where Kings Bay Sub Base is located. So I participated in the program there, and the initial site that I had did not work out. After about 90 days, they laid me off, and I had to find another site, and I ended up having to go into private practice in order to participate with that site. So that was my first experience becoming an entrepreneur. And I had thought about it in the past, but I had a lot of self-doubt and a lot of fears about what if I fail, what if the clients don't come, right? All of those what if negative questions that kind of kept me from taking that leap. But then once I was backed into a corner, I had to, right? And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, right? It seemed like a crisis in the moment, but then later it's one of those things that you look back on and think, I'm so grateful that happened, right? Once I was able to take that leap, it kind of helped me get through the fear of, things not going well or failing at something. And I started to take more and more leaps. And that's eventually what led me to starting this telehealth company.
So you talked about your uniqueness in the market really being focused on a lot of military veterans and active military personnel as kind of a niche within your offering. But what makes Myndworx unique against looking at other maybe telehealth and telemental health platforms?
Well, I think what makes us unique is we're relationship centered. So therapy is not a transaction, it's a human connection. We're intentional about how clinicians are supported, how clients are matched, privacy, and how privacy and trust are maintained. And I think the biggest difference is that, a lot of the platforms that are coming out that are telehealth platforms are tech companies who are offering mental health services. We're a mental health company and we utilize tech services to support our work, but it's not the central factor of our business, right? It's a tool, not the driving force.
So Anneke, your site mentioned specialized support for military service members and first responders. Why was this important to you?
Well, this focus came from years of seeing how hard it can be for military members and first responders to access quality mental health care. Even when benefits technically exist, the systems are difficult to navigate. They have long wait times. The services aren't always designed with their realities in mind. We have a really deep understanding of all these challenges because we spent years and years providing services within these systems. And above all, this work is grounded in a deep respect for the commitment and sacrifice that these individuals and families make. They deserve care that reflects that respect. And, a lot of times it's very difficult for them to find it through their TRICARE benefits or their EAP benefits or their local, military service providing agencies. And another factor is privacy. A lot of people in the military don't come for privacy reasons. And, privacy is very important to us. And we recognize how important it is for military service members to keep their mental health services private.
That's amazing. And I think that's a very noble cause and approach to really enabling these veterans and active military members to have a safe space to talk to somebody. So let's talk about, the platform, because that's obviously essential in delivering decentralized services. So can you talk about some of the biggest challenges in building trust via a digital platform and like a remote presence? Because, mental health is natively personal, and some people might argue that you need an in-person connection, but can you talk about how you kind of overcame that narrative?
Well, so counseling is all about the relationship between the provider and the client. Trust is what is the agent of change in counseling, right? I think the biggest challenge is making sure that technology doesn't interfere with human connection. And you made a comment about that earlier about counseling happening face to face. I think it can be just as effective remotely as it can face to face with video services, not necessarily just telephone, but when you can see the person that you're interacting with. Some people feel like something is lost in that, but also at the same time, there's so many gains to be had by being able to utilize services via telehealth, right? I can do it at any location. I can do it at any time. It doesn't require travel time. I don't have to wait in a doctor's office, right? There's so many benefits, both for the client and the provider to be able to provide these services from home. And it creates a lot more flexibility and I think efficient use of time, right? To be able to achieve these services online. So from the beginning, we focused on creating conditions where real connection could happen. So being consistent, being clear, making sure that our privacy practices are in order and that we're providing safe, HIPAA-compliant, secure services, and really respecting clients' time. And technology is just the bridge. So trust is built between people. And once that exists, then meaningful change becomes possible, even online.
Yeah, and technology can add good or bad friction. I know we have a lot of conversations around that and processes and how you use it to enable the delivery of your services. But I know you deliver services in a lot of different states based on the current rules. Your therapist needs to be licensed per state. So are there any unexpected hurdles that you encountered when you were navigating state by state regulations or trying to grow the business across state lines? Did you encounter anything unexpected, or was there challenges that you didn't foresee?
Realistically, I think that it's something that evolved over time, right? We started out just working on, we were practicing in North Carolina and Virginia, and we started to recognize that rates are different in different states, and that, if we are seeing a client in one state, but we're licensed in, both states, that, how the rates are distributed. And when we started observing that pattern in our reimbursements, I started to think, why is this happening? How are these things, how can we maximize this, right? So, but also, I want to be mindful to following ethical requirements, making sure we're practicing within state licensing guidelines. And it just kind of evolved into a situation where we began to recognize that there's a lot of opportunity by getting licensed in multiple states. And I think this is something that a lot of the tech platforms have also recognized, right? A lot of times they pay for clinicians to get licensed in multiple states, but they don't always follow the ethical guidelines in relation to that, right? So sometimes tech companies will have providers practicing in states they're not licensed, and we're very diligent about making sure that we are making sure that our clinicians are licensed in the state that they're practicing in, that the client is located in at the time. And so we're rigorous about following those guidelines and principles, and it's an ethical requirement. At the same time, we're really hopeful. There's a counseling compact that has been in process for several years. And it would be a major step forward if they were able to actually put that into place, where a large group of states have all agreed to accept the licenses of other states. How that will happen is questionable, and some of the previous efforts at accomplishing that have not been, in my opinion, helpful for clinicians or clients. So I'm hoping that they're going to do that in a way that's beneficial and helpful for everyone. But yeah, there's overcoming regulatory hurdles is more about just recognizing, oh, there's an opportunity here. Why is this happening? Seeing a pattern and kind of figuring out how to take advantage of that, right? And so that's how we have overcome those regulatory hurdles.
Yeah, it's great business acumen, and I really respected your approach to privacy and compliance as well. So just for clarity, you are a client of mine, and when we started to talk about some expanded outreach and approach to different strategies, you were really leading the conversation around, is this skirting HIPAA rules? Are we good with from a privacy perspective? And, generally that's me leading those conversations and kind of dragging people kicking and screaming. And it was a very good collaborative effort, and it's very refreshing, honestly, to not have to go through that. Because some people will be like, PHI, who cares? Do we really have to do this? And it's just refreshing to deal with people that actually take that stuff seriously and understand the value and the downstream implications that has on their patients. So that was great. But I really wanted to shift to your services and your outcomes. So is there a specific story or a specific time at Myndworx when you really felt the impact you made, and or is there a specific moment when you felt like you broke through and touched somebody?
Well, so I can't really describe specific instances for reasons of confidentiality, but I can say that, we really recognized that we were having an impact when we started receiving word of mouth referrals from clients who had completed services or who were actively engaged in services. So when people trust you enough to recommend care to someone that they care about, that's incredibly meaningful, right? That's when I knew that we were really doing something right, when we started to get those word of mouth referrals, and also people who come back, right? They complete their however many sessions, and they have a new problem emerge, and we're the first people that they think of. They think, well, I need to return to that provider I was seeing at Myndworx because, we really made an impact on their life the first time.
So when we talk about cybersecurity or HIPAA compliance and sensitive client data, can you talk a little bit about and help everyone understand, and maybe other health practitioners and telehealth or mental health practitioners, what is your unique approach to privacy, I would say, because, HIPAA is not the most robust privacy document, and, you could still not respect patient privacy while following HIPAA, because there's more you can do. And I think you go a little further. I don't know how much you want to disclose about, some of the opt-in stuff that we did, or making sure that people really had a clear understanding of the usage of their data and what was allowable and how you communicated that. If you can talk about that for a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Well, to start with, we use secure platforms. We have strong access controls, and we do some clinician training about HIPAA compliance and privacy practices. In mental health, protecting client data isn't just a requirement, it's also an ethical responsibility, right?
Yep.
We are,
Yep.
part of our licensing requirement is that we protect people's private health information. So, it's a little more important to us than it is to companies that don't provide health-related services, right? Another factor is that we just reviewed and updated our privacy policies. So we want to make sure that we're promoting our privacy policy, that people are very aware of what information we're sharing, who we're sharing it with, and they are opting in or opting out. And we give them an easy way to opt out of, receiving any kind of marketing emails or follow-up services, or contacts, I mean. We also make it really clear that their private health information is not shared with anyone, right? That is
Yep.
completely securely protected on our HIPAA compliant and secure platform that we use. So as far as marketing information, really, we let them know that we're just going to share your name,
Yeah,
your email address,
very
and that's about
specific
it,
things.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and working through all of that with you, I think one of the things that I also wanted to touch on was the adoption of good technology practices early on, because I know we talked about some of the intake processes and streamlining that, and the technology is just as important as the process. So, you have a great technical platform to adopt that, but what role does like business process and the steps you take, whether it's written over the phone, order of operations, can you talk about the relation between how you operate and the technology you use?
Wow. Well, so, that has also been an endeavor of trial and error, right?
Yep.
You
Yep.
try something like initially we started with the telehealth platform. We realized there's some limitations to this. We're going to have to create a new account and start over again as a business as opposed to an individual in private practice, right? And so, I think a lot of times you find that the tech is a problem when there becomes some sort of friction, right? And then you have to go back and revisit and think about how am I going to adjust this? And realistically, the earlier the better, right? The longer I spend on something that isn't working, the harder it's going to be to transition to something that will work. So I think that, it's important to start with a tech solution that works well for you early on. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's difficult to know what you don't know, right? You don't know
Well, that's where the
what's
outsiders
going to
come
be
in,
an
right?
issue, right?
Yeah, and that's why I use an accountant, I have a bookkeeper, right? I don't know finance well, and it's about no one knows everything,
Right.
so it's about finding those experts in their field that can help you minimize the mistakes. I'll never say avoid the mistakes, because there's no world where you avoid every mistake. But if you can minimize and mitigate those mistakes and avoid the go backs, right, it's so much more valuable, and you get so much more momentum as you grow. How has the industry evolved since COVID? I mean, do you see people going back to in-person therapy? Are they liking the remote presence and the flexibility of being able to connect with their therapist anywhere? Or do you think the industry has permanently changed from COVID?
Well, so I think that the pandemic opened the door for telehealth to be reimbursed by insurance at scale, which changed everything. So
Yeah.
while, the interest in counseling has declined since that peak, mental health care is still essential, especially as people juggle work, family, and life stressors. And I think that, as we see the government and the military and other, large scale institutions really latching on to accepting telehealth as a way of providing services that's a lot more accessible for their clients. I think that we're in a position now where they can't close Pandora's box, right? I think this is something that is gonna continue to grow.
So I've got a loaded question for you. How do you measure success?
So we focus on client outcomes, clinician sustainability, and responsible growth. So if those are aligned, we're doing our job well.
That's amazing. It's hard to answer that question succinctly, and you did a great job at that. So rolling back to really entrepreneurship and your unique path, What was the biggest lesson you learned as a founder in the mental health space?
Ooh, biggest lesson. I learned that you're going to make mistakes and learning to accept that is everything.
The earlier you accept that, the easier the mistakes are to stomach.
Right? I think if you could start with the mindset that I know I'm going to make mistakes when I do this
Yeah.
and I'll figure it out, that is everything, right?
And that's consistent with every single entrepreneur. They learn that lesson eventually. And I think what you're saying is so true is like if you start with that mindset, then it just makes the whole thing so much easier. You're not going to be beating yourself up so much. Um,
Right.
I I think the industry is really tricky because, obviously you need to generate revenue to pay your therapist, to um, run the practice, to grow. But how do you balance empathy with business strategy? Say someone can't afford therapy. How do you navigate that? And do you find yourself kind of operating with two different mentalities, or do you kind of have an approach to balance that kind of difficult position?
Well, I mean, we start by remembering that sustainability creates the space for empathy to exist, right? We can't support people well if the system isn't healthy. So we do have to have our bottom line met in order to be able to provide services to people. That being said, all of our clinicians are contractors, right? So they all make their own individual decision about whether they're going to take a lower cash rate from a client who has an individual situation that they can't afford therapy. And so each clinician makes that decision individually. I will say some of our clinicians, offer pro bono services or services at a low rate, either temporarily for a period of time until a client is employed again and has health insurance again, or is in a different financial situation and is able to pay for the services.
Yeah, that's great. You're so flexible, and the clinicians that you employ are flexible as well. Because I think, that goes a long way in terms of relationship building. But what if someone was thinking about entering being a therapist or opening a therapy, a mental health practice? Um, what advice would you give them?
Well, first off, accept from the outset that you're going to make mistakes. So don't let fear of
Yeah,
struggle or hard work stop you from starting. There's no way to know what you don't know until you're in it. And then also
yeah,
research as much as you can and move forward with faith in yourself that you'll be able to handle whatever comes.
yeah. That's great. So that brings us to the lightning round. I like to do these quick hitting questions and try to get a quick one word or a couple word answer from you. So 5 questions, about 60 seconds. You ready?
Okay,
One word to describe Myndworx.
growth.
It's great. What's your dream collaboration?
Working with military service members and families in a system that's secure, effective, accessible, and fair to our providers. It doesn't fully exist yet, but it's a good dream.
Yeah, we got to start somewhere. If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
Traveling the world.
Favorite self-care ritual?
Right now, I'm focused on practicing acceptance and gratitude.
That's great. Most exciting mental health trend going into 2026?
Well, I think the most exciting trend is the increased use of employee assistance programs that offer free initial counseling, helping people experience the value of therapy and sometimes creating lasting positive change. And also, I'm pretty excited about the counseling compact. I'm really hoping it's going to come into effect in 2026.
So you're saying if someone has insurance and they're not sure if they get maybe that free first session, can they just reach out to you and you can look up, help them understand what their benefits are?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. And where can people find Myndworx online, and what's the best way to connect with you?
So we're at www.myndworx.net. And realistically, that's the best way to connect with us. If you go through and click book now, you'll be able to schedule an appointment with our matching specialist, and she'll have a conversation with you and get you started.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Anneke, for the time. I really appreciate it. And I know it's bright and early for you, and I'm wrapping up my Friday here, counting down the minutes. But I really appreciate the time. Any final advice for listeners, maybe thinking about their mental health? Maybe they're hesitant to go to therapy, and I know you and I have had conversations about that, about being in maybe a specific industry where it's not looked well upon. Maybe it's embarrassing. But any advice or tips to anyone maybe thinking about mental health or navigating that space?
Yeah, I mean, mental health is foundational. So taking care of that allows you to show up more fully in every aspect of your life, for your work, for your family, for yourself, in every relationship, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's important to recognize that making a change within yourself can change every other aspect of your life.
That's awesome. Anneke, you do great work. I was really happy to, work with you and get and support you and help you, figure a couple things out and get the business on track and accelerate your growth. But thanks so much again for the time. And this is, I think, episode 8, episode 9 of Miami Cyber. I've got another one Tuesday. We'll be talking about AI education. That'll be out week after next. So I hope everyone's having a great new year. And if you're an entrepreneur in Miami or abroad, want to talk tech, anything, love to hear your story and spotlight you. My name is Matt Mulcahy, Miami Cyber. Thanks so much. Have a great day.